Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker podcast. This is the audio version of a video show I make on YouTube for Electromaker.io, covering a variety of maker and embedded wonderfulness, be it projects or new products or funding website things that you can go and fund if you're interested in doing so, focusing on the maker and DIY crowd, also the more industry side of embedded engineering sometimes, anything that seems fun that I can be enthusiastic about each week. And this week's show has a wide variety of nice things. We have a couple of projects from the Electromaker Project Hub, the classic idea of a robotic bartender given a new twist in a really quite hilarious video by Terence Grover, and a Destiny Ghost themed internet status notifier. The status notifier side of it tells you if your internet has gone out or not, and the Destiny Ghost side of it is themed on the Ghost from Destiny, a small flying robot that accompanies you through the game. We'll also be looking at a mini version of Winamp running on the M5 stack Cardputer, which incidentally is still our product of the week and we are giving one away, and we'll be looking at the follow-up to Stephen Hawes's solderless PNP stuff he was doing last week that we talked about on the show. A lot of people said, hey, it's really cool that you're using this non-solder paste stuff. Why don't you try and actually put it on the PNP machine so it can put the non-solder paste, the conductive ink on it, and then put the components on, which is exactly what he's done. That, along with new Arduino boards and Raspberry Pi creating their own SD cards, are reasons why I should probably get on with the show. But just before I do, a quick reminder, if you want to support us, head to electromaker.io/shop and see if there's anything you need or anything you want to buy as a gift. We fund ourselves primarily via our shop, and so buying things from it allows me to keep doing this for the foreseeable future, which is something I would absolutely love to do. Additionally, if you head to the YouTube channel and give us a subscription there, that would be appreciated, but of course is not necessary, and neither is giving us a good rating in your podcast app, but it is of course appreciated. So with all that out of the way, let's start the show. We're going to begin this week's show by looking at a couple of projects from the Electromaker Project Hub. Now, if you are not familiar with the Electromaker Project Hub, it is a place where anybody can go and post their projects. All you need is a free Electromaker account, and if you've already posted your project elsewhere, you may find that you'll be able to simply import that, saving you a lot of work and being able to share it with people. And the Project Hub is probably my favorite part of the Electromaker website and experience for me, just seeing the wonderful things that people make. And some of them are a little bit more in-house than others. Of course, Robin's x86 cluster is a project. It is now on the Electromaker Project Hub. And yeah, there's a wide variety of wonderful projects, but what I'd like to bring your attention to today is, well, one a little older project, which is the Destiny Internet Ghost, and another one which is a robot bartender, which we'll get onto in a moment. So Destiny Internet Ghost is a fantastic name for a band, now that I come to think of it, but in the context of this, the Destiny Ghost is from the Destiny series of computer games, Destiny 1 and 2, and you have a little flying ghost companion who is with you at all times. And it's an integral part of the game, and that's where the aesthetics of this design come from, and it's a really, really nice job that they have done. And the Internet Notifier side of it is the circuitry involved that will allow you to see at a glance if you're having disruptions in your internet service. So the project is from Tarantula3, who is a well-known name on the Electromaker Project Hub. They've put a bunch of wonderful projects up. I've featured them on the show before. And as always, they have a video attached to it as well, which takes you through everything that you need to know about the project in a video format, and a great write-up as well. Now, the project is a follow-up to something that Tarantula actually made before. This is sort of an iteration on their Internet Notifier design. And under the hood, there's a nice simplicity to it. I'm not saying it's easy to make, but there's a nice simplicity here, in that you have a D1 Mini which is attached to an RGB LED which is battery powered, and if it detects that it's not connecting to the internet, it will change the light on it will change the color of the light that it is putting out. And of course, since it is battery powered and it's not connected necessarily to any kind of mains or anything, if the power goes out, knocking your router out, you will still actually get the notification. I know there are very few circumstances where that might actually happen, but for example, if you're browsing on your phone and you have a data cap and it's the middle of the day, the power could go out and you might not even notice, and this thing could suddenly blink a different color and you could stop watching Netflix and waste all of your data plan, for just one example of how this thing could be useful. So the electronic side of it is essentially pinging Google until it cannot, but the notification light has to fit inside this Destiny Ghost shell, and this is actually something that is completely 3D printed, something I didn't realize at first, because at first glance this looks really quite nice. And I don't mean to say that 3D prints can't look nice, but there's a lot of real clean colors on this. But yes, this is all something that was printed. I think the STL was found separately. Yeah, you can download the STL from Cult3D. So this is an STL somebody else made of a Destiny Internet Ghost that was mildly modified to allow the LED to fit inside it. The coloration after the fact is one of the reasons that this pops so well, because it was a white print, but as you can see from the picture at the top, there is some nice outlining on it, the black here and the orange at the top, and a couple of the extra lines here. And yeah, it's just a really small scope but really high output project, if that makes any sense, in that taking a nice 3D print and putting a light inside it is a nice ornament, but he's added functionality to it by making it a status notifier. It's just a really compact idea for a project, and I really appreciate that. It's also something that you can very easily follow and make yourself if you're interested in doing so. Any Wi-Fi enabled board will do for this. All it needs to be able to do is ping the internet and speak to an RGB LED, and of course if you have access to a 3D printer you can do this, or you can use one of the many services that you just send them an STL file and they will send you 3D prints in the post for a fairly fair price. But if you do that, I suggest you look locally, just because I think you should support your local places. There are makerspaces that will do that kind of thing for you, and the money that you give to them will help keep actual open makerspaces running in your locality, in your city, in wherever you happen to be. The second project we're going to talk about is the Bartender. Now, since the dawn of cheap hobby pumps and Arduinos, people have been trying to make their own robotic bartenders, and the funny thing about those projects is that almost no two look alike, because people have just iterated over it to get it working in any way that they can. However, this, even amongst that wide, varied field, is somewhat unique. This is a project by Terence Grover, one of the Electromaker project community, and he's come up with a video to go alongside a quite chaotic build, which is chaotic in and of itself. Now, the actual bartender that he's made is so unique. It uses a rotating base of, I think, an old lamp that he strapped the bottles onto, and it very much looks like it is held together with sticky tape and hope, but the tech inside it is actually quite dense. It's really well thought out. You give it a voice command and the robot will answer back to you. In fact, the robot's cheekier than any bartender I've ever met, and I live in Berlin. But you speak to the robot, it will reply back to you, and then it will make that drink based on a voice command, and as you can see, the bottles rotate around. And yes, this is very much a prototype build, so he's having to make sure that the liquor doesn't immediately fall down onto that pile of electronics and completely destroy it, but it works. Now, I don't want to always invoke the spirit of Michael Reeves when someone makes a funny maker video with a bit of edgy humor, but yeah, I've not put the sound on this video simply because this is supposed to be a vaguely family-friendly show. It was never specified that way, but I've kept it that way, and there is a bit of language in this video if that's something that concerns you. But yeah, it's a wonderful project build. It's an incredibly funny video that made me laugh several times at night at home, which is not ideal because the family was sleeping, but yes, it certainly tickled me, and I hope it will you too, and I will leave a link to it in the description of the video. I don't want to sound old, but there's a part of me that specifically remembers drinking cocktail mixers that were essentially just two strong liquors with a dash of something colourful in it. Now, as I mentioned on last week's show, the M5 Stack Cardputer is our product of the week, and we have an ongoing giveaway for that. And if you would like to enter it, you just need to head to the actual product of the week video about it that Robin has made, and you can find out how to enter underneath it. But just by chance, I noticed a project by Volos Projects, who is someone we have featured on the channel before. A very long time ago, I think the first project we covered, not long after the Electromaker Show began, was the Arduino-based calculator that he made. And we've featured a couple of projects since then. It's a fantastic maker channel, but he has turned his attention to the M5 Stack Cardputer, which I thought was just perfect timing. But what he's decided to do with it is really quite wonderful. This is a miniature Winamp player playing using the everything that is built into the Cardputer, because it has a speaker built into it. It has the nice little display as well. It has the ability to plug in an SD card. So if you have some of your favorite MP3 saved from back in the days when we actually used Winamp, you can now get that same experience on the M5 Stack Cardputer. Now, if you would like to hear how the audio quality is on the Cardputer, I suggest going and watching his video. I was pleasantly surprised. What with it being such a small speaker, there's a decent amount of definition out of it. I mean, you're not going to be getting much in the way of bass, but yeah, it was coming out of the Cardputer and into whatever mic that Volos is recording the video on, and it sounds pretty good. But the thing I really want to draw attention to is just this wonderful Winamp shell that he has on the GUI. Now, in the intro, I sort of hinted at the fact that Winamp source code finally got released, and here it is on the ESP32. I may have misled you slightly. It's actually more impressive than that, in my opinion, because this is a GUI that has been built by hand in code to look like Winamp and to give some kind of functionality that would be present in any MP3 player. And if you are interested in finding out exactly how this was achieved, you can head down to the description of the video where the code is up on GitHub. And having had a very brief look at it, there's a couple of things about it that are quite interesting. So it's using FreeRTOS, and there's a separate task for the audio scheduling. This is something that I've dabbled in the past, but don't really know well enough to talk about with any kind of authority. But I mean, it clearly works. You can see that from the video. But yes, this is you can see him creating the sprite in the setup function, and then going through a draw function that piece by piece makes the sprite reflect what should be happening on the screen. This is all done completely in code, and as he says in the video, he took several hours just trying to get this working and get it looking right and fitting all the right information on it. And it does look quite wonderful. You have the little Winamp bars showing the graphic equalizer and the count up and everything that you would expect from a functional MP3 player. It's just a really lovely project, and as I said, the timing could not be better given that we are right in the middle of a giveaway for the M5 Stack Cardputer. And as I mentioned at the start of this section, if you're interested in that, head to our description. You can find Robin's video where he takes you through the high-level features of it and all that kind of stuff. It's just really nice to see a really fleshed out project like this using the same tech. I was already fairly convinced that the M5 Stack Cardputer was a quite special little bit of tech, given its low price point and the amazing amount of power that it has with the kind of setup it has. It's not your traditional development platform in any way, but that's its strength in my opinion. But yes, if you would like to find out more, there's a link to Volos project and our Product of the Week video in the description. We're going to move on now to the Nicla Env, which is an environmental sensor module on the Arduino Pro line. Now, I think most people watching the show are somewhat familiar with the Arduino Pro line at this point, but in case you're not, it's taking everything that Arduino has done in the sort of hobby market for the last 10, 15 years, is it now? And then puts it into a place where it is certified for use in industrial and commercial use. The most famous, I suppose, board would be the Portenta H7, which is an STM32 based board, which is very powerful and has a number of add-ons. The Nicla line, however, is very interesting because they are tiny little boards, 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, each with a powerful microcontroller on them and some kind of different way of sensing. So the original Sense ME board was a movement sensing board with a couple of other sensors on it. There's a Vision board which has an AI camera on it which can do AI edge tasks on the board, and there's also a voice board which has a MEMS microphone on it. Now, all three of those boards also have a programmable microcontroller on them, making them completely self-contained units. That's what sets the environmental sensor they've just put out aside. This does have a Renesas microcontroller on there, but it's not one that you can program. There's no way of accessing that microcontroller, at least not out the box. I'm sure someone will hack it somehow. But this is designed to be a separate module that will work with another Nicla board or another Arduino Pro board. And as the name suggests, it is an environmental sensor. So you're getting temperature and humidity sensing. You're also getting various forms of gas sensing. And both of those gas sensors are AI enabled. So obviously, within these terms, that can mean quite a lot. As a general rule, an AI enabled sensor just gives you slightly smoother readings that have gone through some processing on the board before they get to your host microcontroller. And that is what is happening here. So specifically, we have the HS4001 for precise humidity and temperature measurements, and the ZMod 4410AI1V and the ZMod 4510AI1V for AI-enabled detection of TVOCs, NO2, O3, and other gases. And as always, the Nicla Pro line, one of the main things that makes it really interesting is its size, its form factor. It is just over 2 by 2 centimeters. So theoretically, if you took this board and you paired it with any of the other boards in the Nicla line and used that as your host microcontroller, you could have this truly tiny footprint board that is able to be programmed to do whatever tasks you want, including AI tasks. They're well supported with platforms like Edge Impulse and TensorFlow Lite and things like that, but also have very high quality sensing on board, meaning that it's perfect for hobbyists at home or actually prototyping things that could end up in an industrial or commercial setting. Now, probably because of the way they've decided to do this and not have a host microcontroller on it, one of the things this board has going for it is its price. Because while €41.65, or whatever that is in your local currency, is decidedly more than getting a module board that does temperature and humidity or gas sensing at the more hobby end of the spectrum, if you look into industrial sensors that do the same thing, you're going to be paying a lot more than that as well. Whereas this lands squarely in the middle, which is a very interesting thing. And I haven't actually looked into it, but presumably you could get this sensor and still pair it with any other microcontroller you want to. So this is actually a very well-priced thing, even if you're not interested in the rest of the Arduino Pro line. Although, of course, if you want true compatibility, you're going to want to use a Potenta or a Nicla with it. At this stage when I'm recording this has only just been announced and I don't know all that much more about it. We'll probably come back to this one because the Nicla line is, out of all of the Arduino Pro line, the boards that I find the most interesting just because of their unique form factor and the way that they've approached it. But I am always very interested to hear what people think about this. The Arduino Pro line in general seems to be a bit divisive in terms of people wondering who it's for. But as I've said many times before, I think if you're an engineer who's looking for a very easy way to prototype something, it's perfect for you, or someone who's more at the hobby end of the spectrum looking to move in that direction, the jump from hobby code that's easy to understand right through to full-on industrial tool chains and using things that are very good but have not really been updated or made easier to use for many years. This is a nice spot in the middle, at least in my opinion. On last week's show, we looked at Stephen Hawes's attempts to remove solder from the soldering operation when it comes to SMT components. Now, this isn't removing solder paste forever. All of the different solutions that he's tried are not as robust as solder paste. This is not meant to replace anything, but it's a very interesting look into how you can quickly prototype things without needing to use heat, have a hot plate, solder masks, all that kind of stuff. And he settled on using some conductive ink that sets and then putting the pieces on using a pick and place machine while it was powered up. So the LEDs lit up as it was populated. It was amazing. I reacted quite loudly to it in last week's show. And I was one of the many people who wondered what would happen if the pick and place machine had a little tube on it that could deposit that not solder onto the board as it was going. So you could just put a board in, it would put the ink down, put the components down, and again, you could have it powered up so that it would come up. And yeah, this time round, needless to say, Stephen messed around with a lot of different designs and came up with a design that works. And instead of giving you my reaction to it, I'll just give you his.
That's so cool.
I get such a lot of joy out of seeing other people just try doing things and then they work and they get so excited about it. I mean, enthusiasm is basically my job, and Stephen has such a great enthusiasm throughout all of his videos. As I said last week, if you're not familiar with his YouTube channel, it's definitely worth a look. A lot of it covers the creation of the Lumen PNP machine, which is what you can see him using here, a completely open hardware, open source PNP machine. And there's another element to this I want to quickly draw on. If you watch this video, Stephen mentions something that I think is really quite interesting. One of the reasons why he's been able to iterate over this so fast is not just because of the fact that he's very good at coming up with prototype hardware to try things out. He is changing the way that you can work with the Lumen pick and place machine by creating a set of Python libraries allowing you to pretty much pilot and control the pick and place machine in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to do with a commercial pick and place machine. Just a quick reminder as well, the Lumen pick and place is under $2,000. It's wondrously cheap. It's a wonderful project. But if you are interested in finding out more about the Python library Stephen's working on, you should definitely check out this video, because I want to wait a little while and see what people do with it. But you have this $2,000 machine that is precise enough to do pick and place, and then a Python library that allows you to control it in different ways, and I can't help but wonder what hardware hackers out there will stick on the end of the Lumen and get it to do. I mean, you have a really high words, Ian. You have a really precise robotic arm, essentially, that can move around and do a bunch of things. So what you stick on the end of that arm will change entirely what it can do. It's a really exciting project, and just like last week, I'll link this video in the description. In the description of Stephen's video, you can find a link to Opulu, or is it Opula? Apu? Oh no, not again. Opulo will be linked in the description along with this video. Now, micro SD cards are something that you probably don't think about all that often unless you're using them in a situation where they're very, very important. Now, of course, all data is important, but I'm talking about when you put one in a Raspberry Pi and you use it as the main storage for everything, the operating system, all of the data on it, and it's all fun and games until it corrupts and you lose your entire project, which you didn't back up. And is the reason why, despite the fact that I do this for a job and my friends ask, why is your home not a smart home? That's why. It was the brain. I had such a nice custom smart home setup that I made on a Raspberry Pi from scratch, even before I knew things that I know now. It's gone. Anyway, my own incompetence aside, Raspberry Pi are deciding to take things somewhat into their own hands by manufacturing Raspberry Pi branded SD cards. Now, this isn't a move that surprises me all that much. In fact, it surprises me that it's taken them this long to do it, because it seems like such an easy catch for them. They can bundle it into Raspberry Pi kits, and much like there was a time where if you were having any kind of power trouble on the Pi, people would just say, buy a branded Raspberry Pi plug. That's what you need to do, despite the fact that you could quite easily just buy any other plug that met the power requirements. It's a little bit like Apple products in that regard. Very different businesses, of course, but people are very likely to say if you don't use the official thing, you won't get the intended result. And there's an argument to be said that this could happen here, but any kind of, I believe it's A2P2 or something like that, is not A2P2. I think it's just A2, isn't it? An A2 micro SD card, yes, with support for DDR50 and SDR104 bus speeds and command queuing. It's basically just a really nice SD card. I'm going to link the How to Geek article on it, just because this is where I read it first, and so it seems fair to share the primary source that I found of it, but there's also a page on Raspberry Pi about it now. There seems to be 32, 64, and 128 gigabyte variants available, and as always, you can buy it from a local reseller. And there's not all that much more to say about it than that now. If you want a SD card that you can trust in a Raspberry Pi, get a good one, and they are speccing these to be good enough for use with a Raspberry Pi. If you want to circumvent that, you need to use some kind of other way of attaching it to a Pi. And once again, Mr. Raspberry Pi, Jeff Geeling, has done extensive videos on the different kinds of storage you could use for your Raspberry Pi. And if I remember to, I will find one of the better tutorials he's made on completely booting without any kind of SD card on the Pi, and I'll leave it in the description of this video. But I am curious with this one, what you think. Because when companies do put out their own branded version of something, as I said earlier, it can cause a bit of a reaction from the community as to whether you should specifically use that with it or not. And of course, a lot of it comes down to knowledge and whether you have been bitten by this kind of thing before, like I have. But I am curious to hear what you think about this one. Raspberry Pi branded SD cards seem like a good idea from where I'm standing, especially if you're someone like me who has been bitten by it. But of course, this is yet just another product that you could just get your own third-party kind of. And there are names in SD cards that have already been trusted for years. Are Raspberry Pi going to struggle with the trust level of their SD cards, despite the fact that they're spec'd very well? There's a lot of kind of questions about it, and probably a lot of opinions out there, which is why I'm very interested to hear yours. We're going to move over to Hackaday for a very interesting study into 3D printing, and I think one that has been on people's minds for several years. If you've done any printing with resin, you know already that you're dealing with a very hazardous substance. You don't want to be breathing in the fumes, you just definitely don't want to be ingesting it. Even getting it in your skin is unpleasant, and of course there are various other things attached to it. Usually if you're using resin printing, you're going to need a large amount of isopropyl alcohol for cleaning as well, which is highly flammable, which also gives off a lot of vapor. It's something that I think anyone who's worked in electronics for a while is a bit more used to, because you use ISO for cleaning absolutely everything. I have liters of the stuff. But the fact remains, 3D printing is technically melting plastic in a room where you are, and a lot of people take precautions, but what we haven't had so far is any kind of definitive research or proof into how carcinogenic 3D printing is. So this Hackaday article from Dan Maloney sums up some research that took place, and if you would like to find the research paper, it is the first link in the first paragraph just here. I will link the Hackaday page. You can easily find the paper from it. And to not bury the lead too much, having given this a quick read, the basic answer is the exact thing that they were looking for to potentially be carcinogenic and poisonous. They did not find in this study, but could not rule out that there are other things that could be potentially carcinogenic. This is just sort of how research works. You really look at one small thing and you prove that one thing rather than loosely look at a lot of things and come up with nothing useful, which is the scientific method. It's unfortunate that a lot of people online and a lot of pundits use that as a way of actually attacking something by saying, yeah, but it didn't say this. No, but it wasn't necessarily looking for that. But if you would like a run through of it, this is a fantastic sum up in this article on Hackaday, and you can read the paper just here. I do feel like it's something that everyone has considered when you get into home manufacturing of any kind. We tend to not have the same tools and the same safety equipment as you find in industrial settings, and of course they're not all perfect, especially depending on where the world you are talking about. But some definitive research into 3D printing and the potential harm it can do to your body is a very wanted thing, I think, and I'm very glad that people are starting to look into it. And of course, if anything new comes up on this is something I'll be following, and it will turn up in a future show. But for now, link in the description. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your continued support. I hope the podcast crowd are continuing to enjoy the fact that I seem to verbalize the thing I'm looking at the screen so much it makes for a good podcast. As always, I'm open to suggestions for things that I could talk about on the podcast. If there's anything that works specifically better as an audio format, as soon as anyone tells me about that, I can easily swap out a normal show section with a purely recorded podcast section. The best way to probably do that is to find our Discord server, which is linked in the show notes, along with the links for everything I have talked about in this week's show. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you so much for joining me. I will speak to you next week. I hope you have a safe, fun, and creative week.